how to be profitable in 2024.
Marketing has really changed.
That there is a path to a career within our practices.
Change your website geared more towards them.
The multi-generational communication conflicts.
People aren't coming to you because you're an in-network provider. They're coming to you because they want a beautiful smile.
This is truly what's on the mind of orthodontists.
You know, having that high level of service.
This day and age, it's all about differentiating yourself.
So happy to be here.
Hey, Shannon, thanks for joining us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
You are in a lot of offices, and I cannot wait to hear kind of what your take is on this. But what is on the mind of every orthodontist that they don't have a solution for?
You know, I think one of the biggest things that are on their mind is they feel like they're losing market share with just the increased competition of general dentists doing more and more clear aligner therapy and taking more market share and kind of taking what they call the easy cases. And I think that's a concern. I think there's certainly things you can do to help with that, but I think that technology has advanced significantly, and that's affecting the industry for sure.
I think that's so interesting. We haven't had a lot of conversation around that. And I do think that this idea, you know, people focus a lot on growing the market, but I think your insight into market share, because that's really that affects the average orthodontist on a more real level every day, right?
Oh, absolutely. I think a lot of people really don't understand the statistics and kind of the numbers out there, but I would say 25% of GPs are doing some kind of comprehensive treatment, and over 60% are doing treatment with clear aligners with limited treatment options. So there are a lot of GPs doing it. And again, technology is getting better and better, which, you know, kind of empowers them and they feel like they can do more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's really great insight. And I think, you know, we are really big about facing the problem head on and looking for solutions kind of through the problem. The obstacle is the way kind of a mentality. And so if you've identified that as a problem that these orthodontists don't really have a solution for, the industry doesn't have a solution for at the moment, how can practices really lean into that and kind of embrace that to find a solution?
I think that's a great question. And I think that, you know, it really is back to the basics. It's something so easy. I think that marketing has really changed, you know, and I think that so many people really think, well, I don't get any referrals from GPs anyway. You know, I get referrals from patients and from direct to consumer marketing, right? And I just honestly feel like some of the best practices that I go in, they still have really strong referral patterns because they're doing hard cases. They're embracing hard cases and they're showcasing that. They're going back to GPs and, you know, saying, hey, I'm a specialist. This is what I can do. And I think that, again, marketing to the consumer, to the patient, saying that you're a specialist and why they should go to a specialist, why the value is there. You know, why would you pay $1,000 less to go to someone else that isn't a specialist, that didn't go to school for this? So really embrace it. But it is really surprising when you land on people's websites or you look at their social media that they're really not embracing to tout that they are a specialist and what the differences are in the treatment and the patient experience, and more than anything, the outcome. I mean, there's just, you know, it's night and day an outcome for that.
So really just leaning into this, we are specialists and here are the things that set us apart from GPs, and really making that super clear.
Absolutely.
So this has been something that I know in the industry we've been talking about for a long time, but you know, you don't always see a lot of orthodontists doing it. I mean, do you have any insight why do they believe it's hard? Is it overwhelming? Like, what is keeping them from doing it? And then also the second part of that is, do you have kind of some easy bullet points for them on this specific piece to implement that?
Sure. I think the AAO actually has some really fun little videos that everyone has access to and should download and use on their social media. And, you know, just kind of poking fun at, you know, why you should see a specialist. I mean, there's even, you know, commercials out there, State Farm commercials, things like that on, you know, what's the difference in getting, you know, something overnight insurance versus having an agency that kind of encompasses all. So I think some resources there. But again, I really think just the grassroots of meeting with your referrals, explaining that you're a specialist, that you embrace the hard cases. I hear a lot of, especially young orthodontists say, well, the GPs are taking all the easy cases. Well, you're a specialist. It should be hard. I don't think you probably hear cardiologists saying, geez, I'm just getting all the hard cases lately. You're a specialist. You have to embrace that and let people know, hey, if you have hard cases, send them to me. I specialize in that. And again, even on your website, marketing to the consumer and letting them know that you are a specialist, what the difference is, the difference in value. I mean, just the outcome that you're going to have after you're done with an ortho. Really, when you think about just the difference sometimes in the price point, it's just not that big of a difference. And I also think on the flip side of embracing the hard cases and doing the hard cases is a lot of orthos aren't doing limited cases. They're letting a lot of the GPs take those limited cases. And really, the biggest growth that we've seen in the market over the last decade has been on the back of adult patients, 35%, right? So just an increase of adult patients coming in the door. And if you're not offering a limited treatment option to those adults who probably 70% of them have already been treated as adolescents, they're going to go to the GP because it is a big price point difference. So I think, marketing that you have limited treatment options for a different price is important too if you want to continue to keep that adult patient flow going and the GPs aren't gobbling them up.
I love that. Okay, so I have a question about the adult, because obviously the statistics are out there. We've seen more adult patients. Do you see that there's been kind of maybe in some practices or in some markets kind of an over-reliance on the adult patients, and they kind of focus on that while allowing what I would call like the bread and butter patient, the kids, the 14 and under, the families? What are your thoughts on that?
Sure. I think there are some oversaturated markets that there were definitely people who focused on adult patient population. Some people opened, practices specifically for adults. And I think during economic uncertainty times like we're in right now, everyone's kind of like, what do I do? Should I save my money, spend my money? Everything's more expensive. They're holding onto their, wallets a little bit tighter. They might not be seeking treatment the same way they were 12, 18, 24 months ago. So I think that practices that are adult heavy are definitely feeling a little bit more of a decline simply because families are still going to treat adolescents even when times are tight, but adults probably think I can wait a year or two until, things get a little bit better and I don't have to be so tight with my money. So I think definitely we've seen a decline in the adult treatment.
Yeah.
And just really people coming in the door, adult new patient exams are down.
Right. Well, I love that insight. I'm not going to sit on that too much because I know that we could talk for hours about that. So I love the identification of the problem that you've kind of identified. And we've talked about some different ways to kind of combat that. I know that that'll get people thinking. So thank you for sharing that. So Shannon, tell us a little bit about yourself. We haven't really introduced you yet. So tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do. We'd love to hear more.
Absolutely. So I'm Shannon Patterson, and I'm a partner at Benson Koppel and Associates. We are rebranding, though. We're going to be launching our rebrand at the AAO, so we are going to be Benson Koppel Patterson and Associates. I've been here, and I've been a partner for quite a while, just never really changed the name, but I've been here 14 years. Came out of the medical industry, so definitely had a different insight in kind of how I saw things, and it's really fun to kind of have that perspective because I think what dental and ortho's going through now is something I experienced 25 years ago in medicine. So Doug was my neighbor. It just was kind of happenstance that I landed in this, and it's been a really fun ride. I absolutely love what I do. I have a lot of passion for helping orthodontists. We are traditionally evaluation, transition, and recruiting firm, but really, we're transition advisors, whether somebody's transitioning in their career to something new or somebody's transitioning their practice. We kind of help with both of those.
Well, you're great at what you do. I mean, I've gotten an up close look at different things over the years, and you're great at what you do. And I know you've added a lot of value to the industry. So that's great.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, and I love the story, and congrats getting your name on the door. I love it.
Yeah. It's not something we were always too concerned about, but I'm sure that everybody knows that Chris is going to be winding down. He's not going anywhere, but he is going to be around about 3 or 4 more years. So it was time to do it.
Well, congratulations. So if someone's listening to this and they're like, hey, I just want to know how to get in contact with Shannon, where would we send them?
Yeah, absolutely. You would send them to our website, Benson Koppel and Associates, and all of our information is on there.
Okay, gotcha. Absolutely. Well, we'll also put in the comments in the link below.
Okay,
right?
awesome.
Well, so we've got a couple more questions, and I can't wait to get your insight on this as well. So now we're kind of taking a broader view, maybe, see where you go with it. But where are practices, as well as the overall industry, vulnerable, in your opinion?
Several things. The advancement of technology, and again, more and more non-specialists jumping in and doing ortho. But the other thing is student debt. I think that student debt is huge, and I'm very fortunate to spend a lot of time, the majority of my time, with young doctors, and it is absolutely staggering, the amount of debt. I would say the average debt right now for an orthodontic resident is close to $600,000. We know about 100 of them that have $1 million in student debt. That's not any other kind of debt. Can you imagine graduating from college with close to $1 million in student debt? It's overwhelming. And my concern is, with the advancement of technology, are people going to continue to invest in orthodontic education? The numbers right now show that they are, but when sometimes I speak to D1s to D4s in dental schools, you don't see a lot of people raise their hand that are going to specialize. They're kind of maxed out on educational debt, and a lot of them think, well, I'm going to work a few years and decide if that's what I want to do, because it is very overwhelming. So that is a concern, and there's a lot of things, hopefully, that can change in the next few years that will help that. And one of them is, most orthodontic residencies don't allow the orthodontic residents to work while they're in residency. So they accumulate even more debt. So we'll see if some of those things change in the future. And just the cost of living. Some of these programs are in very prominent cities, and they just have to borrow so much to even live.
I was actually going to ask that as kind of a follow-up. So I think the debt as a vulnerability is a really interesting perspective. And I think that's really great that you brought that up. What is the driver? I mean, obviously the school tuition can be expensive, but what is the driver of the debt? Is it lifestyle? Is it education? What's making up the $1 million in debt?
I'm so glad you asked that, because I have, boomer doctors, I call them. I love generational differences. Talk about that a lot. The boomers always think, well, they're living like a doctor when they're a resident. That's why they're so broke. But it's absolutely not true. Some of these programs are so expensive. They're $100,000 a year. But like I said earlier, also some of these programs are located in areas that have an extremely high cost of living. If you're going to school, in Boston or New York or, San Francisco, the cost of living is just outrageous. And if they're not allowed to work, they're just borrowing that money for living expenses while they're in school. And the demographic of the residents has changed. We're close to 60% female now. And, 10 years ago, it was probably 70% male, and a lot of them were married and they had a spouse that worked while they were going through school that contributed to the household income. Now we don't see that as much. I would say that 80% of residents are not married. So there's been a lot of demographic changes that have kind of happened, but it's purely educational and cost of living expenses while you're in school.
Thanks for sharing that, because I think, I hear that a lot too from people that are like, well, they're driving the doctor car, living in really nice apartments and all that stuff. But I think some of these cities, like you point out, like a nothing apartment is still really expensive. And yeah, so I always kind of like ending on a high note. We're almost there. So if you're looking at the overall industry and the practice level, maybe a little bit too, where would you say that we're positioned for success?
Oh, there's so many factors going on for success. People ask me all the time, would you send your child go through ortho residency training? Absolutely. I would all day. It's a great profession. I think that coming out of school now, young doctors have so many options, to make a lot of money. There is a lot of debt, but there are also opportunities to make a lot of money. And, there's opportunities for transitions. Some people are going the corporate route. Some people are not. We're seeing a rise in partnerships, but the orthodontic industry is booming. When you look at the reports that come out, how much money people are going to spend on it is huge. And I also, again, just that adult factor of having the option to treat with clear aligners to adults and get more patients in the door. There's so much good is going on in every practice. And, just the digital workflow, things have really changed, and it allows doctors to do a lot more. Something that got introduced about 2 years ago because of the digital workflow is we see a lot of young doctors kind of have a hybrid work model. And if you'd told me 10 years ago there would be a hybrid work model for an orthodontist, I would have been like, yeah, right. But there absolutely is. Being able to do new patient exams on a Zoom, being able to do clin checks for the practice on non-clinical days, being able to have more room in chairs to treat patients because you have a digital workflow, all of that stuff. So a lot of good things going on.
I love it. Well, as we wrap up here, we've talked about, 5, 6, 7 different things, right? Which is great. You put a lot of nuggets out there for people to really think about and maybe even dig deeper into. If you were to wrap this up, somebody's listening to this on a Friday and they're like, I want to spend the weekend to kind of think of a couple things that I can really take to the office that would make a difference on Monday. What are 1 to 3 things they should be thinking about or doing?
Well, the first thing I think they should do is go to your website, go to your website on your phone, okay? And look at your website and then Google or even ask Alexa, what orthodontists are in Winston-Salem, North Carolina? Kind of see where you fall. Look at your website and look at others and think about, why would someone come to me? Do I really promote that I'm a specialist and, that I align teeth really, really well, and, what to expect on your patient journey and the results? I think some marketing has gotten really, really silly, but I think sometimes just pictures of before and after are huge when a mom looks at that. They can really connect. So I think that's one big homework assignment, is definitely go home and look at that. And then also look on your social media, how many likes do you have? All of that stuff has really come into play in the last few years. People look at that in a good way, not necessarily all the silliness, but, do the patients that you have, do they actually like your Facebook page? And just kind of seeing where you land on that.
I love that. I think, we work with a lot of orthodontists that are trying to differentiate themselves. And a lot of times what comes up, we find ourselves in conversations with people and we just ask the question, what are you really doing that's different? What story are you telling that's different? And, a lot of times when they do the research, it's hard to find something that actually is different other than that their name is different. And so I think that's a really great homework assignment, to go look at your website, Google awesome suggestions, and it sets up for the last question really, really well. This is my favorite thing because we've been asking everybody this kind of pop quiz question at the end. And it has to do with story, because the story that we're telling really is a lot. And also, I should say it matters a lot, but also our ability to insert ourselves into the story of our customers, our patients, right? Which is kind of what you're talking about, going through and looking at the story they're telling. Every story, though, has 2 really great things, dynamic things in it: a really great hero and a really great villain.
True.
So in light of that, and I've told some people, it could be a movie, it could be a book, it could be it could be life, real life. Who or what is your favorite villain, and who or what is your favorite hero?
Oh my goodness. My favorite hero, that's easy, Atticus Finch in To Kill a Mockingbird. That book really changed my life when I was a little girl, and I loved it. And villain, oh my goodness. I was always petrified of Cruella de Vil in 101 Dalmatians. So she just always scared me when I was little. But, that's a great question to end on, because I think orthodontists are hero. And I think that you talking about engaging through story is huge. I think sometimes just investing in a videographer and having a patient share their experience and their journey of, this is what I looked like before, and this is how the transformation happened, and this is what I look now. And, thanks to my hero, my orthodontist.
Yeah, that's a great, and I would even say, if the idea of investing in a videographer is overwhelming to someone who's listening, maybe you're a startup or something like that, this conversation around social media that we've been having, like anymore, you could just get your phone out.
This works right here. You don't have to go out and necessarily hire somebody. And you know what? Everyone has Gen Zs working in their office, Gen Ys, right? So these young kids, they know how to do things with that phone that we could never think of. So yeah, you don't have to go out and spend a lot of money on that. But, video is going to be big in the future. Funny story, my daughter, she does not look at a recipe book. So all my life I've collected these recipe books for her, and she's like, Mom, I don't want those. Like, she doesn't even understand how to look at a recipe and comprehend how to make it, because she just goes to YouTube or TikTok and watches a video on how to make something. So the future is video. It's going to be really big.
I love that story. So I have my oldest is 14 years old, and she has recently started showing a lot of interest in cooking and stuff like that. And so like the last maybe 2 or 3 weeks, she's made 3 or 4 different recipes. And I was like, these are really good. You know, where did you get them? She's like, oh, they're on TikTok.
Absolutely.
Nothing on a recipe book.
No.
I love it.
No.
Well, Shannon, thank you so much for spending this time, sharing your wisdom, your expertise. I always get so much out of our conversations, and I know the people that are listening will as well. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.